Welcome to our deep dive. First, we will set the stage for what federal immigration crackdowns are and why they occur. Then, we will examine whether these operations are primarily about public safety or if there are political dimensions at play. After that, we will move through legal frameworks, enforcement workflows, community impacts, and policy options. Finally, we will summarize and give you some next steps to continue learning. Let's begin. Here's our agenda so you know what's ahead. First, we will cover context and definitions, followed by the legal framework. Next, we will walk through how operations work, and then examine community impacts and available data. After that, we will compare competing narratives and explore case examples. Then, we will consider ethics and policy options, include a couple of quick quizzes, and finally conclude with a summary and next steps. Before we dive in, a brief disclaimer. This content is for educational purposes only and is not legal advice. It presents multiple perspectives without endorsing any political party or policy position. Please consult primary sources and qualified attorneys for decisions that require legal guidance. With that clear, let's move into the background and context. To start, we need the big picture. Periodic federal immigration enforcement surges occur in major metropolitan areas. Officially, these are aimed at arresting people with criminal records who are subject to removal. Critics, however, note that the timing and location patterns often align with politically opposed jurisdictions, which raises questions about political motives. Meanwhile, in affected communities, fear can spread, reducing access to social services and chilling cooperation with local police. As a result, the central tension emerges between federal enforcement authority and local sanctuary-style policies. With this context set, let's explore the legal framework that structures these conflicts. Now, on to the legal framework. The federal government has supremacy in immigration law. But the Constitution's anti-commandeering doctrine means states and localities cannot be compelled to enforce federal law. In practice, immigration detainers are requests, not judicial warrants, and local agencies have discretion on whether to honor them, depending on state and local law. Sanctuary policies often limit cooperation beyond what federal law requires, such as declining to hold individuals past their release time without a judicial warrant. When disputes arise, courts decide questions of preemption and constitutional compliance. With the framework established, let's turn to what sanctuary policies look like in more detail. Sanctuary policies vary, but they typically involve 5 elements. First, they define information-sharing boundaries so that required notifications may be provided while non-mandatory data exchanges are limited. Second, they restrict detentions without judicial warrants, declining to hold individuals past their local release time, on administrative detainers alone. Third, they prioritize local resources for local criminal matters rather than civil immigration enforcement. Fourth, they maintain access to city services regardless of immigration status. Finally, they aim to build community trust so that victims and witnesses are willing to report crimes. Having defined these policies, let's map the operational workflow of federal crackdowns. Operationally, agencies begin by setting priorities and planning, often across multiple field offices. On execution days, teams conduct arrests of named targets while also encountering other individuals, sometimes called collateral arrests. After arrest, screening determines whether cases move into criminal proceedings or solely into civil immigration processes. Meanwhile, community organizations often issue alerts, and legal hotlines light up. Finally, trust impacts can ripple through neighborhoods, affecting cooperation with local law enforcement. Now that we understand the mechanics, let's visualize the sequence of events over time. This timeline illustrates the life cycle of a typical crackdown. First comes a policy announcement, followed by interagency planning. Next, officials assemble target lists and schedule operation days. After operations, community and legal responses intensify, sometimes leading to litigation and court rulings. Finally, agencies conduct post-operation reviews and, in some cases, adjust policies or priorities. Having seen the cadence of events, let's examine impacts and indicators. This table summarizes common impact indicators. In the short term, reports to local police can decline in some immigrant neighborhoods, potentially affecting case clearance rates. Access to services, including health and education, may be disrupted if people avoid institutions out of fear. Arrests generally include both targeted individuals and collateral encounters, though composition varies by operation and time period. Finally, local and federal relations can become strained, sometimes leading to negotiations or litigation. With impacts in mind, let's compare the core narratives driving debate. Here we juxtapose two narratives. On the left, proponents argue that operations target individuals with serious criminal histories, promote deterrence, ensure uniform application of federal law, and enhance officer safety through coordinated action. On the right, critics contend that surges are clustered in politically opposed jurisdictions, generate chilling effects that reduce community cooperation, impose significant resource costs, and undermine local autonomy and community policing strategies. Balancing these claims requires data, legal analysis, and context. To ground this discussion further, let's consider generalized case examples. While specifics vary, generalized patterns emerge across regions. In a southern metro area, joint task forces encountered local resistance and nonprofit hotlines saw increased call volumes. In a Midwest city, local policy limited custodial holds without judicial warrants, and federal operations emphasized warrant-backed actions. On the West Coast, community alert networks reduced mobility as people stayed home, while local police departments simultaneously tried to preserve trust. With these examples in mind, let's test your understanding with a quick quiz. Quiz time. Which legal doctrine prevents the federal government from compelling local agencies to enforce federal immigration law? Your options are Supremacy Clause, Anti-Commandeering, Preemption, and Habeas Corpus. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is anti-commandeering. This doctrine restricts the federal government from compelling local officials to administer or enforce federal regulations or programs, even though federal law is supreme in areas within its constitutional purview. Now let's transition to the ethical and human considerations. Ethical considerations include potential risks to due process when rapid actions outpace access to legal counsel, concerns about family separation and trauma, and disparate impacts on mixed-status households. People may avoid healthcare and schooling out of fear, which can worsen long-term outcomes. Policymakers and practitioners must weigh deterrence goals against maintaining community trust. With ethics in mind, let's consider policy options and practical steps. Here are practical options. First, define clear priorities that focus on serious, recent convictions within lawful bounds. Second, enhance warrant practices by preferring judicial warrants over administrative holds when seeking custody transfers. Third, codify information sharing guidelines to ensure legal compliance while limiting non-required exchanges. Fourth, build trust through multilingual outreach, victim protections, and education about visas for victims and witnesses. Fifth, measure outcomes by tracking arrest composition, service use, and reporting rates. Sixth, create liaison channels among federal, local, and community organizations. Finally, conduct after-action reviews and publicly report findings to enable transparent adjustments. To visualize interagency dynamics, let's look at a sequence of interactions. This sequence diagram walks through institutional interactions. First, ICE requests information from local police. Local police consult City Hall's policy to determine what is permissible. City Hall confirms policy limits. Next, ICE presents a judicial warrant to the local jail seeking custody. The jail checks legal criteria and either transfers custody or releases the individual per local law. Meanwhile, media inquiries may occur, and a nonprofit may file suit. A federal court then evaluates preemption and constitutional questions, while an immigration court proceeds separately with the removal case. These parallel tracks show how legal and operational processes intersect. Now, let's check your understanding with a second quick quiz. Second quiz. Which of the following is a common goal cited by sanctuary policies? The options are: increase administrative detainers, build community trust to improve crime reporting, centralize all data with federal databases, and prioritize civil immigration enforcement by local police. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is to build community trust to improve crime reporting. Sanctuary approaches generally aim to encourage community members to come forward as victims and witnesses without fear that routine interactions with local police will lead to civil immigration enforcement. With that clarified, let's consolidate our key takeaways. Here are the key takeaways. Federal supremacy in immigration law coexists with anti-commandeering limits on local obligations. Operations may include both targeted arrests and collateral encounters. Impacts span trust, service utilization, and intergovernmental relations. The debate weighs public safety claims against political and social costs. Finally, transparent priorities, judicial warrants, and liaison channels can help reduce friction. Before we wrap up, let's summarize and point you to next steps. To summarize, we covered context, legal structures, operational workflows, and community impacts. We compared the public safety rationale with critiques of political signaling and examined the trade-offs involved. We also discussed ethical considerations and policy options aimed at improving transparency and outcomes. For next steps, consult primary sources, relevant court rulings, and official after-action reports to ground your understanding in current evidence. As we close, we invite you to engage further with the channel. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, please like the video, share it with someone who might benefit, and subscribe for more balanced breakdowns. We would love to hear your perspective in the comments. Is this a public safety imperative, political theater, or something in between? Your thoughts help guide future content. See you next time.